Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this combined authority meeting. A really massive agenda today, but before we start, I'd like to pay tribute to Leeds Councillor Mahalia France-Meir, who died tragically this week. I know so many of of all of us around this table knew her, and you will be really as shocked as we are and want to send on our condolences to her friends and family at this tragic time. But James, I wonder if I could come to you, if you would like to say a few words, and obviously other councillors, if you would so wish.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, and it was a huge shock to everybody that Mahalia passed away this week. She was somebody that was really well liked by everybody in the council, her residents in Moortown and Meanwood Ward. She was a real trailblazer as one of the few Muslim women elected to Leeds Council, and a real compassionate and warm person who we will who has left a real gap in our Labour group, and we're all we'll miss her so badly.
Thank you, and she was so young, and 4 children as well. Councillors, would you like to say anything? Councillor Lamb.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I won't add very much other than to echo your condolences. Just to say whatever our political differences, she was a very kind, gentle, generous woman. In my experience of her, I went to the funeral yesterday, and it's so sad to see that. But we're all one team when it comes to these kind of things. So condolences to everyone affected, but we will all miss her deeply.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson, because she was on the scrutiny
committee.
Yeah,
I'm going to, I would endorse what's been said, and I'm going to make my own personal tribute to her tomorrow at the beginning of the scrutiny board, when her other colleagues should be present at the same time as well to hear what we're going to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and as I say, condolences from all of in the organisation. Thank you. All right, moving on to the meeting. Any apologies, Sarah?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillors Denise Jeffrey and Claire Douglas, with Councillors Matthew Morley and Peter Kilbane attending as substitutes respectively.
Thank you so much. Any declarations of interest that colleagues would like to share? No, thank you. Okay, moving on to exclusion of press and public. Officers have advised that information contained in Appendix 1 to Agenda Item 6, the White Rose Rail Station Update, and Appendix 2 to Agenda Item 14, Mass Transit Update, are treated as exempt under Paragraph 3 of Part 1 to Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. This is because they contain information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the Combined Authority, and further that it is considered that the public interest in maintaining the content of the appendices as exempt outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information, as publication would prejudice current and future decision making. In addition, Appendix 1A to Item Agenda 6, White Rose Rail Station Update, has been circulated to members as a supplementary item, which as Chair, I'm content to add to the agenda. If you agree, the press and public will be excluded should members wish to discuss the content of the appendices when we consider items 6 and 14. Are we in agreement? Thank you so much. Yes, Councillor.
Sorry, Mayor. I'm in agreement with the first one on White Rose because of the commercial sensitivity. I'd just like to ask a few questions about the second one, because I'm not entirely satisfied that it's in the public interest to fully exempt that document. I did alert the Chief Executive and Nikki in advance, and I'm grateful for the responses that I've had and discussion this morning, and I've got a better understanding of the issues, but I still think it's important to express my concerns on the record and make sure they're addressed. So just a few questions that I have, and accepting that sensitive commercial information should be protected. It would be helpful to set out which specific parts of the appendix are commercially sensitive. Was a redacted version considered? What exactly is the harm claimed from publishing the findings? And if the advice still stands, will officers at the very least commit to publishing a public assurance summary and action plan as soon as possible?
Thank you. And as this has been shared with members, could I hand over to Nikki? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Lamb. The first point in discussing exemptions under Schedule 12A, paragraph 3, is whether disclosure ought to be provided in its entirety to the public. In relation to this report itself, it was considered that paragraph 3 was fully engaged for that report, specifically in relation to the fact that this relates to an independent peer review with government, within which it relates to matters of commercial sensitivity, financial affairs for the organisation, including information around critique and risk, which should be kept confidential at this moment in time. The whole purpose of an independent review is so that you can have candid and frank discussions and those matters kept under review. On that basis, paragraph 3 was fully engaged for full exemption. What I did as monitoring officer consider is whether redaction would be suitable in the context of that report. However, when you read the report in its entirety, the view is that if you were to start redaction, it would create a largely unintelligible report that would not make any sense to the public and could create a mosaic effect which would create inferences where it incorrect and possibly misleading to the public. On that basis and on balance, I consider that the public interest of not disclosing it is fully met.
Thank you. And as Chief Executive, Ben, would you like to add?
Just to add to your second point about can we provide assurance and the work that will follow the report to a future meeting, yes, we can do that as part of the setting up the project for success that we're doing in the light of several things, including the NISTA review. So we can make that commitment.
Thank you so much, and thank you for that thorough answer, Nikki. Shall we take a vote on exemption? Those who are happy to keep these items exempt from public and press. I can vote. Agenda item 6. Are we happy to exempt agenda item 6, which is White Rose Rail Station update? We are, thank you so much. And item 14, apologies. The item regarding the mass transit report. Please show of hands. Thank you. Happy to exempt. Lovely. Thank you. Okay. 1 second. Thank you. And who would like to disagree? Thank you. Anyone like to abstain? Thank you so much. Okay, let's move on, and we will exempt both items from press and public. Thank you so much, Nikki, for that information. Moving on to item 4. These are the minutes of the meeting for the CA. Members have any further comments or questions? No, thank you. Are we content to confirm these as an accurate record? We are. Thank you so much. Okay, moving on to item 5, to my update. Most of what I want to update you on, including mass transit, White Rose Station, budget and bus franchising, are covered extensively in the formal papers, so my update will be relatively brief. Of great significance to our region was last week's announcement from the Chancellor at an event in Leeds about Northern Powerhouse Rail, £45 billion worth of commitment over the coming decades to transform rail connectivity across the north. A commitment to that all-important new station in Bradford, including a new line down to Huddersfield, additional capacity at Leeds Station, and improvements to the Leeds-Sheffield line. As you all know, we've had so many false dawns, I think 60 promises on Northern Powerhouse Rail, not a spade in the ground from previous governments, but this time it is different. The government working in lockstep with mayors and local councils from across the north to get Northern Powerhouse Rail delivered once and for all. And I'm pleased to report that I and the council leaders around the table have just come from a meeting at Leeds Station with Heidi Alexander, the Secretary of State for Transport, to sign that all-important compact with our region, committing the government to deliver on its promises to our community. The announcement was influenced by the work that Oliver Coppard, David Scaife and I asked Lord David Blunkett to do with us to look at our ambitions for rail in Yorkshire. Our Yorkshire's plan for rail is credible affordable, phased plan set out how to improve rail connections between our cities and our towns, and aligns with the plans of Andy Burnham and Steve Rotherham in Greater Manchester and Liverpool City Region, and of course Kim McGuinness's plans in the North East to improve links to the rest of the North. And I would just like to thank my colleagues in the transport team at the CA for driving that work on the White Rose Rail Plan. I'm delighted that government has worked with us and we were able to endorse that huge commitment over the next decade and more. Included in the announcement was 1.1 billion in this spending review to develop schemes and make progress on plans, including in Bradford. This is with an eye on releasing funds at the next spending review in 2028 to ensure we can make a start on the plans for Yorkshire in the first phase. It is really nice to say, for once, Yorkshire is front of the queue. I'm really grateful to government for working so closely with us on this. Right, I'll end my update now, on with the rest of the meeting. Item 6, yes, Councillor.
Sorry, Mayor Braven, I have a question which, as a courtesy, I did email you earlier in the week, so it wasn't a surprise that it was coming. There's a lot of big ticket items on here today around mass transit and franchising, but for a lot of residents, they would just like the combined authority to get the basics right. And you've been copied into a number of emails from residents concerned about the lack of toilet facilities in Leeds bus station. You may not be aware, I did put it in the email, but as someone who suffers from ulcerative colitis and I live with a stoma, I chair the Leeds Stoma Group, and that issue has been brought up at the last 3 meetings. So the concern from the resident that copied us both into an email, A, was that you hadn't replied or responded at all to several emails from him, and B, when can people expect the toilets to be fixed, because it's absolutely vital for so many people. And if we can't get those little things right, how are we going to get these big ticket items right?
Thank you so much, and can I say thank you for your leadership in this space. And stoma bins are very important across not just Leeds Station but elsewhere, so thank you for that. I do agree with you about toilet facilities being a really important part of individuals' journeys, and having sat with drivers from Unite, female drivers, who are also very concerned about toilet facilities across their journeys, and often having been caught short or being concerned about where they park their bus in order to use facilities. This is something I'm looking at in the round, so be reassured, and we will make sure that that email is swiftly replied to. But to reassure yourself that this is something that's very important, and that's why bringing buses back into public control, we will then be able to enhance those facilities to make sure that they serve not only the public, but the workforce that support the public. Councillor Lamb.
Thank you for that reassurance. As I understand it, I think we're already in control of Leeds bus station, so it's entirely in your gift to solve this issue. Now,
it was a wider point, Councillor Lamb, about the whole network and the drivers.
Noted, but could you give us a timeline for when the toilets will be fixed? And if it's not going to be within days, could you arrange for temporary facilities to put in place, so at least there's something there for people to use in the short term?
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. We'll definitely take that away as an item of urgent attention, so thank you. Okay, so moving on, and at the risk of it being the Councillor Lamb show, if we may move on to the next item, thank you. So White Rose Rail Station update. We're working with partners. As you know, we've been working really hard over recent months to resolve legacy issues relating to the station to allow the construction to start. I'm really delighted now that we can finally say we're at a point where we can work towards remobilising the project and completing the construction of this important piece of transport infrastructure in South Leeds. It's a live issue, and there's been further details that have come to light since the publication of the papers, and members will have received an updated appendix to the report. Just to remind members, this is exempt. Therefore, if we wish to discuss any of the content from the appendix, which I'm sure we will, then I will have to ask members of the public, thank you so much for joining us, and press to leave the room. The main report covers next steps to remobilise the project, as well as providing an overview of scrutiny involvement relating to lessons learned and their application to the wider rail programme going forward. May I turn to Dave Haskins, Strategic Head of Major Projects, please speak to the item.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. Thanks for the initial overview there, Chair. As it says, members will recall a report was brought to the Combined Authority in May 2025, setting out the challenges in remobilising the scheme and planned activity. And as you said, we have some positive progress to report around this activity. This work has been ongoing so that the project can be completed. It has been and continues to be a complex situation. So hopefully we're now at the point where there'll be greater clarity on the future activity requirements in the project. Key progress to report here is on concluding negotiations with the scheme promoter to close out legacy issues and ensuring that all land parcels now are will be within Combined Authority ownership. Also relates to the commissioning of Network Rail to develop a project specification, and note that this has been dependent on the conclusion of these legacy issues to date. The next steps on the project, which will be led by Network Rail, relate to design review and procurement, the design stage itself, and then construction and entry into service. It's to be noted that a change request has been brought forward, which is set out in Appendix 3, if I've got my numbers correct, to draw down approximately £1.423 million of funding to undertake this work, as well as to deal with ongoing project costs that have been arising. Further reports will be provided on the approach, scope, timescale and cost. We don't have firm indication on these at this stage. This is why the approval is required through this report, so that the work can be done to give robust information to work on going forward. The report also required to agree activity, a report will also be required to agree activity on the highways and access works, which will be the first element of remobilisation and is intended to be undertaken by Leeds City Council. Importantly, the report also covers lessons learnt, which was a theme that came up at the previous Combined Authority meeting. Work has been ongoing through closely working with scrutiny, which has been welcome, and we've been able to demonstrate application to wider activity on our rail programme, and that there are a number of areas where we're already bringing in this, such as procurement and looking at project interfaces to support rail delivery. It should be noted as a point that the scrutiny related to West Yorkshire Combined Authority only, although in paragraph 314 of the report, the first bullet point does reference Leeds City Council. It's admitted by myself actually that the statement could have been worded a bit better, as I said, the scrutiny is intended to focus on Combined Authority and Leeds was not part of the review. The wording here should recognise that Leeds did have limited oversight of the project and their input on the scheme was commensurate to the role played. So in a simple terms, there's a bit of clunky wording from me there in that paragraph, which I'd like to clear up. I'd like to leave it there for questions at this point, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions? Are we? I'm assuming we'd like to discuss the amended exempt item. We do? Yes. So if I could, apologies, ask press and public just to step out for a moment, please. And of course, you'll be welcome back after this. Thank you. No baby as yet. Thank you so much. So welcome back into the room, members of the public and the press. And if just before we take the next decision, just to update Councillor Lamb, I've requested information regarding the Leeds toilets, and they're under refurbishment, should be finished by the end of the month, just for your constituent. So continuing with what we were discussing, so item, just to remind ourselves, item 6, the White Rose Rail Station update. So our members happy to note the contents of this report and associated appendices, and to note May 25 approval to commit funding and enter into legal agreements, including delegation to the Chief Executive to acquire land for project progression, noting further funding will be required to complete White Rose Station and will be brought back in a further report with recommendations in summer 2026. Can we also approve the change request to the White Rose Rail Station scheme to increase the CA's funding by the amounts outlined in the report to fund the first phase of scheme remobilisation costs during delivery activity 5, to approve entering into an agreement with Network Rail for the next stage of activity, and to agree that future approvals are made in accordance with the assurance pathway and approval route set out in Appendix 3, subject to remaining within tolerances. Those in favour of the recommendations, please raise your hand. Thank you. Those against? Those abstaining? Thank you so much. Moving on to item 7, bus franchising update. As you all know, I took the decision to franchise the bus network in 2024. Ever since, we've been focused on getting the first franchise buses onto the roads of West Yorkshire early next year. We've already launched our Weaver network brand, begun procurement on the first round of tenders, and are looking at the super designs of the new bus fleet we will be purchasing. Creating a brand new public-run bus network is difficult. Only Greater Manchester have done so so far. We have an extensive and complex transition programme that's beginning to reshape the combined authority as an organisation. Now, so much has been achieved in the first 2 years of transition, and we now have greater clarity about what is required to complete the task over the coming months. It's absolutely vital the combined authority ensures the transition programme is properly funded to support smooth and timely delivery of the new service. And remember, we only have to do this once. There is a significant amount of technical work that needs to be completed. The report we're presented with sets out the costs needed to ensure successful delivery of the franchising transition programme well into delivery. The report also brings forward approvals for the development and delivery of assets that would be needed to run the Weaver network as a public service. Plans to accelerate delivery of depot electrification, including in Huddersfield and Bradford, marks a significant step towards our plans for zero emission bus fleet for the region and development of a single coordinated bus network control centre for our franchise services across West Yorkshire, and will support the transition to a unified network under franchising with customers at the heart of an improved offer. And if I can say, the control centre is also the game changer for us, because currently it's each individual bus operator that controls what's happening on the roads. That guiding mind of a control centre is absolutely vital. Can I go to Councillor Susan Hinchcliffe as Chair of the Transport Committee for any further comments, and then I'll turn to Paul Matthews, Director of Bus Franchising, to speak to the item. Councillor Hinchcliffe.
Thank you, Mayor. And I just wanted to add really thanks for the Shadow Bus Franchising Board, because actually that is going through a lot of the detail that is required on this. It is a huge operation, but you can see how we're putting the building blocks in place to get to where we need to get to. So that's a cross-party board as well, so that was great to see that in operation. And many of these issues have already been discussed cross-party at that board, so thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And your point about it being cross-party, this is for everybody in West Yorkshire. And certainly scrutiny, challenge, critical friends, that's really important in these huge projects that we are all on board to deliver for the people of West Yorkshire. Over to you, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, a good summary. It is a complex paper, and I apologise for that, but that, as the Chair said, it's a complex programme, and therefore I think the paper probably reflects that. I mean, in essence, it is in 4 parts. One, it does talk a bit about the programme and give a bit of a programme update. It does talk about the sustaining that momentum to getting to the end point of delivery. It does talk about the status of depots and some ambitions and work we want to do with electrification and the control centre. And I think hopefully the report speaks for itself, but if I can just pull out a couple of bullets to bring to your attention. I think the first one is in terms of the table, which is attached at 3.8, which summarises or attempts to summarise, only at a high level, the work that has been done in the first phase of the franchising journey, which took us to the award of the issuing of the first ITT, the contract tendering documents. Now we're in the phase 2, which is equally important, about preparing for the launch. And as you recall, members will recall, we have a work stream structure, and so the table presents the different activities which are going on in the different work streams, both within that have happened in phase 1, but are also happening in phase 2. As we look ahead, we do need to ensure, as the Chair said, that we sustain the momentum and that we have adequate funds to do so. And within 3.11, that explains that prior to the assessment, prior to the decision being taken in 2024, an assessment was made of what budgetary allowance would be needed to run the programme for the 4-year period from that date up until April 28. And that sum was calculated based on, as I say, what we thought was going to be needed, really based upon limited experiences within Greater Manchester, and that was spread over the 4 years, a sum of just over £20 million. And that is designed to fund the programme costs of staffing, to buy in specialist support, and also, most importantly of all, to begin the recruitment process to make sure the authority has sufficient staff to actually run the franchise network when we get to April 27. So 3 elements to that particular funding. I think it's worth pointing out at 3.15 that to date, and by the time we get to after the first 2 years of the programme, we are actually on track with spending that half of that £20 million. But as is standard practice, we have reviewed what we need to do to get to the end point of 28 and what the level, the activity that will be needed. And as a result, we have identified that because of significant additional work, which is set out in bullets 3.19 to 3.21, the programme will need a cautious estimate of £13 million over the next 2 years to get to the April 28 position, to ensure that we can continue to deliver and sustain the momentum that we are doing currently. That is a cautious estimate, and clearly we will continue to manage our costs completely. I think it's also worth stressing that in 3.25 that the work, which is hugely important about the future financial revenue model for bus franchising, the franchise network, is underway, but by the summer we'll have a clearer picture as to what that revenue model will look like, and indeed its ability to absorb some of the transition costs in that final year, should we wish to do that. But we can't wait for that, and that's why in 3.27 we're suggesting an allocation of the CRSTS capacity fund to fund that £13 million additional uplift of the programme costs. You'll see in that bullet the fact that we have received an additional amount of money from government within that fund, which is required to be spent and has nothing allocated to it at the moment, and so it is funding that is best designed for a situation that we're finding ourselves in this situation, and the balancing number would be funded from CRSTS and activity which are unlikely to be completed in the timelines required. The second part or the third part of the paper really is addressing or returning to the depot strategy that the authority previously approved, and is in 2 parts. If I refer you to the 3.39, 3.40, beg your pardon, the first part talks about the depot strategy, and you recall that the intention was to acquire depots that we needed, and as I think members will be aware, that the Wakefield depot has not proved possible to acquire because of its state, and therefore we're going through a development work at the moment to build a new site, which, as you can see in 3.41, is identified now as being at Newton Bar. However, it's unlikely that that site will actually be ready for round 2 when we're required to be up and running. And so in 3.43, what we're saying is we do need to have contingency arrangements to manage the Wakefield network when it goes live before that depot is fit and ready to function, or if it isn't fit and ready for function. And so we're seeking a variation to the delegation previously awarded to enable either leasing or further acquisitions of small sites for maintenance or temporary parking, which would then be released back once Wakefield Depot is up and running. The second part of the depot position is around electrification, and as you members will be aware, there is the ambition to make sure all the larger Tier A franchise contracts have electrified depots at some point during the course of the next 10 or so years. But however, there is a 3.53 and 3.53. There are two opportunities to accelerate the electrification process at two depots, one in Huddersfield and one in Bradford. And at 3.57, we identify how those electrification work would, or how that electrification work would be funded, and it would be funded by a reallocation of Zebra funding, which initially was partly designed for Wakefield in terms of new vehicles, which cannot now be delivered. So it's reallocation of that funding. It's using some funding that through the JACU funding that Bradford has received, and it's also using some unspent Zebra funding to ensure that these two depots are up and running and electrified, ready for when they need to be. Huddersfield for round 1 and Bradford in round 3. And then in terms of the control centre, as the chair you said, this is the final item, and it does relate to our ambitions for an integrated bus control centre, which was set out in the original assessment, and the benefits are set out in 3.64 to 3.68. The project, however, does have some set timelines to deliver. As yet, we are having not decided upon location, and we're doing some options appraisals to identify what the location of that facility would be. But we do, however, need to have some development funding to get that facility up and running. And as you can see, finally, in 3.71, the business case requests using some BSIP funding to take the business case to decision point 4 to enable the development work for that control centre to happen. So I'll pause there for any questions.
Thank you so much, and thanks for the rigour taking us through that. Can I just double check, Paul, that in the way that it was framed, it did feel like Wakefield's losing out. Can you please just reassure us that the people of Wakefield are not going to be held back in bus franchising in any way because of these decisions?
No, it's an important point, and clearly the paper does show a reduction in the number of vehicles being electrified, and that's because of the inability to deliver that part of the Zebra programme, which was designed in partnership with Arriva to deliver new vehicles and electrify the depot in Wakefield. As we know, that's not now possible because of the state of that infrastructure. And so in the short term, yes, Wakefield will not get the progress it should have had by now, but clearly the new build facility that we are building will be fully electrified. When we get to that round, we will be procuring new vehicles which will also be electric. So it's a delay to their electrification, not any sort of pushback for forever. It's purely a delay.
And they will get a better depot out of this. Is
a
that
fully electrified depot and potentially a fully electrified fleet.
Excellent. Thank you. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for raising that question. Given the absolutely dismal state of buses in Wakefield District, yes, we want electric buses, but we just want buses. Please, we just want buses. So electric buses, great, they will come, but anything just to make sure that we're not left behind, as we have been for the last 5 to 6 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And we are looking at ways that we can support not just people of Wakefield, but across the region to ensure that they, whilst we're in this transition, are able to use buses more efficiently and more affordably. Councillor Scullion.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to come back briefly to 3.8. and I know it's a bit technical, bear with me, the service permit regime, which affects Calderdale particularly, but actually affects all authorities really. We're not an island. We are adjacent to lots of other council areas, and we don't want to be negatively affected by the new service permitting regime. And in terms of looking at some of those cross-border arrangements, we really want those negotiations to give us good outcomes. And obviously, looking towards Greater Manchester, we'd like to look at kind of long-term possible smooth franchising arrangements across both authorities. It will be worth it, really. And when everybody else is looking at franchising in the Upper Valley and Calderdale, we're still dependent on the service permitting regime. We want some of the benefits of franchising at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you, and a really good point, well made. Paul, anything to add?
Clearly, we recognise it is a hugely sensitive issue for those people in Calder Valley. We are well aware of it. We are going through, as I think you are probably aware, a form of statutory consultation with, not with the public, but with operators and with district authorities about the shape of the service permit regime, which will clearly capture those concerns. And once we know what the operator position would be, then we're in a position to plug any gaps that might arise from that. I think the other thing I would probably say, there is some sort of talk around the approach the authorities adopting in respect of permits being different from that adopted in Greater Manchester. And I would wish to assure members we're adopting exactly the same approach as Greater Manchester, and we are in discussions with Greater Manchester about those cross-boundary journeys, as we are with all bordering authorities.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the update. I think it's always worth starting when we're talking about franchising. I've no doubt everyone around this table wants better buses. We have a slight variance on whether franchising is the best mechanism to do that, but I would be delighted to be proved wrong and you be proved right on this one, and I hope that's how it plays out. In terms of what this paper, there's a lot of technical language, a lot of acronyms and things in it. It's necessary, that's how it is, but my plain English summary of what it's telling us is the costs are going up substantially. In terms of the transition cost envelope, it's almost 50% more in terms of what you're asking for today. In terms of the electrification, that's going up. We're not talking about a few 100,000, we're talking about tens of millions going up. And the promise at the start of this was to meet the Mayor's commitment to bring buses under public control and to maintain services at their current level. There isn't a promise to improve services, just to maintain them. I think the hope is over time, under public control, they can be improved, but that isn't the promise. The price is going up and up. But when can we expect to see improvements in services for people? As Councillor Morley has rightly, it's not unique to Wakefield. I can tell you, we want to see better buses. So what assurance can you give us that the transition cost envelope is stable now? With regard to the depot acquisition and leasing arrangements, are they all secured? And if not, what is the risk to the April 2027 launch? You've talked about the electrification, and it's clearly not going to happen in Wakefield in time. What's the timeline for full electrification readiness at all of the other depots? Have operators raised any concerns about workforce transfer under TUPE? Are we confident about the digital systems procurement and that will be ready on time? I think that's enough for now.
Councillor Lamb, these are great questions. I really wish you'd come to the Shadow Board more often, because we could have those questions in great detail. And unfortunately, we are running out of time for the CA. But I would love those questions, and please do attend the board more regularly. Paul,
if I may respond to that, gladly I will try and send a substitute when it's not possible. Equally, if you could arrange for officers to brief us in advance of the meetings, then we could have asked some of these questions then, but that didn't happen this time, unfortunately.
Well, a lot of questions there, and probably in terms of time, won't be able to answer them all. The transition costs, they are higher, without doubt, than we had originally said. I think I would probably rephrase the fact that they have gone up. There are just things that we had not expected to be necessary that are now necessary. But it's semantics, I know, but the programme is bigger and they're more complex, taking longer than was really expected, and as a consequence, the costs are higher than we had originally had expected. I think in terms of some of the electrification costs, I'm not, again, my colleague Simon might help me out here. I don't think these are necessarily going up. There will be a full depot electrification proposal coming back to the authority shortly. This is around bringing forward some existing capital that would not have otherwise have been spent to enable the acceleration of some electrification work. So I wouldn't necessarily say that these electrification costs have gone up, because there will be a paper coming back to the board with the full cost of those electrifications. In terms of briefly in terms of the other ones, the workforce clearly are aware. I have regular dialogue with Unite the Union. There's a TUPE process which is happening, and there are no particular concerns. Clearly, it's unsettling for all staff, and we need to respect that. But in terms of the process, everyone is aware of the TUPE process that's going through, and the timelines for Wakefield. Well, that is something that we're currently working with the contractor we have got on board to assess what those timelines are. But current estimates are that it will be beyond the the January 28 deadline for Wakefield. It will be probably another 9 months beyond that.
Thank you so much, Paul, and I look forward to seeing you at the next meeting. Councillor Love.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'd echo your comments about the Shadow Board. It's extremely useful, and we can delve into these matters. It's a great deal more depth than we can in a meeting like that. Well, it's the private meeting side of it that I want to ask why it is that it's seen as a private meeting, and that the papers, obviously some have to be kept confidential, but why the papers and agendas can't be made available on the website?
Ben.
I think the short answer is because what is being sought here is an opportunity to bring members up to speed on emerging issues and forthcoming papers that come for formal decision. So it's very much about explaining the detail, not all of which makes it into the public papers, because as Councillor Lamb says, we do our best to make sure those papers are understandable by the general public, but there's a lot of technical detail that sits behind. So that's the rationale for why. As you're aware, in the context of the integrated settlement that we're about to come to on the agenda, we are looking at the overall governance of the Combined Authority in the context of the work streams and the programmes that we have coming up under the integrated settlement. And certainly the nature of the meetings that we have about bus franchising and transport in public is one of the things that's part of that review.
And I think you'll remember, Councillor Love, when we were talking about the app in the Shadow Board, and the discussion was, it was a bit more of a workshop, and people were free to be able to speak their mind, and also to ask all the silly questions that they might want to ask. I think that's just about me. And I'm not sure my silly questions are for the public. I don't know, but maybe there's something to take away as we look at the governance. But I really would encourage all members from all political parties, please do come to the Shadow Board, because that is where you can have your questions. It is not about getting them on camera, the questions for clipping and for politics. This is about actually delivering franchising for the public. It's about making sure you're part of the story, so that when we have that fantastic Weaver network, you can be proud and say that you were part of those discussions. This is a team sport. It's not about politics, and I really would just encourage all members to please lean into that responsibility. Okie doke. Any further questions? Let's go to the recommendations. Thank you. Is the Combined Authority happy to approve the increased transition programme revenue costs of up to £13 million, and it's funded via the CRSTS Capacity Fund, and delegates authority to approve a change request to the CRSTS programme. It varies a previous delegation relating to the approved depot strategy to include flexibility to lease and or temporarily purchase additional land or infrastructure, approves a change request to the zero emission bus regional areas, the ZEBRA programme, to provide electric bus charging infrastructure at Huddersfield and Bradford bus depots in preparation for franchising, including using 8 million subject to being received from DEFRA via its joint air quality unit, and reallocating £11 million available within the ZEBRA programme, and approves funding for development work in relation to a single coordinated bus network control centre to support the operation of franchise services for the region. All those in favour of the recommendations, please raise your hand. Thank you. Those against? And those abstaining? Thank you so much. Thank you. These are all big, meaty items that deserve the time and effort and thought that you've all put into your questions. Thank you all so much. Moving on, devolution and the integrated settlement update. We receive an update on the progress made to deliver the integrated settlement from April. Work to develop an outcomes framework for the integrated settlement continues alongside development for a broader framework of all our activities. Together, they'll help demonstrate the impact of our work to government and to the public, while retaining the flexibility through the integrated settlement that's vital for achieving our ambitious priorities. The CA is also asked to consider and also to approve the approach to updating our West Yorkshire local growth plan to bring it into line with new statutory guidance. If I may remind everybody, we were one of the first regions in the country to deliver our local growth plan, and we're definitely ahead of the game. So Sarah Eaton, our Director of Strategy, if you could take us through the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So I think as you've outlined, this paper is seeking to kind of cover three things. One is the update on progress on the development of the broader outcomes framework, which is something that we're not technically required to do, but something that we feel will be extremely valuable for the organisation and for the region in terms of being able to measure outcomes moving forward. The second one is the update on the integrated settlement outcomes framework, and as you said, the third is around the local growth plan. So I'll just quickly move through the paper. I think just in terms of that broader outcomes framework, I think this is based on learning over the last few years, particularly around evaluation and completing our gateway review last year around how we consistently measure progress and how we measure impact. And what we're seeking to do with that broader outcomes framework, as we've described in previous meetings of the combined authority, is to get to a position where we've got a really consistent baseline of measures that people can kind of attach their activity to. The integrated settlement outcomes framework is a subset of that outcomes framework, and I think Appendix 1 shows how we've tried to align both that broader outcomes framework and the integrated settlement outcomes framework. So really important that we understand the integrated settlement outcomes framework is the vehicle that the government will hold us to account for delivering a set of targets. But essentially what we've tried to do with the broader outcomes framework is align to the competencies that we will be taking on board as we become a mayoral strategic authority. And what we think is that future-proofs any additional work that we want to be doing. So as we move forward, it'll be really clear about how we're trying to deliver activities that are of benefit for the region. As you'll see in the paper, there's quite a lot of work being done in this space. So we've developed logic models for each theme to kind of illustrate theories of change. And what we're expecting is that by kind of aligning our data collection methodology, we'll be able to kind of understand how we're delivering on those strategic outcomes over the longer term. What I would say is that obviously as new things happen, the outcomes framework will need to be kind of developed and iterated to kind of pick up on those things, and specifically if we get any additional funding streams where we've got a requirement to kind of have specific measures in place, we'll need to kind of take that account as we move forward. But onto the integrated settlement outcomes framework. Before Christmas, I think it's 4th of December, we brought an update on where we got to with the development of that particular outcomes framework, and we also kind of set out the quantum that we've been given by government, and we got that at the end of November. As we know, there's been some slippage in the timelines, but that paper kind of outlined the progress we've made on agreeing outcomes and measures. And what you'll see in Appendix 2 now is a list of the measures that we've kind of agreed with government at this particular point in time. The work that we're now doing is around setting targets based on that quantum that we received at the end of November, and we're well on the way with that, but we're not at that position where we've completely agreed that at the moment, and which is why it's not with you today. That work is now happening in earnest. We picked up work after Christmas where we'd submitted that third draft, and we're in bilateral negotiations with government on a number of these targets as we speak. Our intention is once we finalise those targets, and this will be really quickly, we'll need to move at speed, is to ensure that we share those targets with combined authority members before we sign off approval from the combined authority. And in September last year, we got delegated authority for the Chief Executive to sign off those targets. But what we want to do is make sure that combined authority members can see those targets in advance of submitting them. Those targets will then go for ministerial and mayoral sign-off, we think mid-February. Once we've kind of signed that, we'll bring that back to the combined authority for endorsement. But the paper just sets out a little bit about what will happen after we've gone through that process. And as we've said previously, there will be a board that will be established, which MHCLG will chair. That's an officer board, and we will be required to report 6 monthly on progress on delivery of the outcomes that we've got in there. And that's going to be really important. There's a real degree of transparency about how we are delivering on that integrated settlement as we progress. And as Ben has outlined, we're really looking at our governance arrangements to make sure that we've got the ability to do this in an effective way moving forward. Just moving on to the kind of the final item around the local growth plan. As you've said, we were the first area to kind of establish a local growth plan. As part of the devolution and community empowerment bill that is working its way through Parliament as we speak, it's currently in the House of Lords. There will be a statutory requirement on us to kind of have some really key specifics within that local growth plan, and what this paper is seeking to do is to kind of give an update on the things that we think we will need to do to make sure that we're delivering on that. They will come into force two months after the devolution bill has been adopted, and we're expecting that adoption to be in spring, so this will be in June time. So we're getting ahead of the curve in terms of that work that we need to do. Most of it is set out in the paper. I'm not intending to go through that. I think just to say that one of the additional pieces of work that we're doing at the moment is around the development of an investment pipeline. And clearly that's really important in terms of us being able to kind of look to the future around what it's going to deliver. And I'm sure that we'll be bringing further reports forward on that as we speak. What we're trying to do here is give a really quick update every meeting around the work that we're doing in this space. So expect to have potentially next time round a bit more of an update on where we are with some of the amendments that have made to the devolution bill. So I'll stop speaking there now, but if there are any questions, happy to take those.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And just to reassure members that all the MSAs are going through this outcomes framework at the moment, and we're in discussions with other MSAs to make sure that we're all in the same space about what government expect from all of us. So what we don't want to be out of step with any other MSA about what their planned delivery is versus ours. So we are in conversations across all five. Councillor Scullion.
Thank you, and thank you to the officers. I'm sure it's been challenging negotiations, and I'm sorry we weren't able to bring the number down anymore, but a good try there. I actually think we should just get on with this, really, and we should press government to get on with it. And actually, we've got the settlement, we've got the strategic outcomes, but actually we know what we need in West Yorkshire. We know what we need in terms of jobs, in terms of housing, in terms of skills, etc. Key thing for us is continued flexibility. You know, those are the outcomes. Actually, in terms of how we get there, I think is for us in West Yorkshire to apply that money as best we can. So keep pressing the question of flexibility. Thank you.
Thank you. Get on with it. It needs to be our mantra, doesn't it? But government wants us to get on with it, and then we have to work it at their time frame. Councillor Hinchcliffe.
Yeah, I'm really obviously pleased to see this, and I know it's been done at pace as well, so thank you very much, and people working over Christmas, etc. I think this also gives us the opportunity through the governance review to make sure that we have that flexibility within West Yorkshire as well. So obviously we work in good partnership across the 5 authorities, and we need to make sure that, you know, we have that flexibility to deliver differently in different places depending on what existing resources there and what strengths there, what gaps are there. So I think we need to make sure in that governance we can demonstrate we're fleet of foot as well. So I think that'd be just really helpful to remind that when we're going through that. Thank you.
Yeah, one size doesn't always fit all. Councillor Lamb.
Thank you, Mayor. I think the move to an integrated settlement is very welcome, and if it works as intended, brilliant. The concern is a bit of cynicism born out of experience, as all governments, and especially the Treasury, and I'll criticise my own government last time now, when they first came into office in 2010, for local government they removed lots of ring fences, which seemed very welcome at the time, gave councils more flexibility, and then gradually used metrics and measuring to start strangling what you could actually do with the money. And that's the worry here, of how we make sure we get to a point where we're not, yes, technically we have an integrated settlement that we can do what we want with, but there are so many strings attached that it really limits what you can do. So my couple of questions are around what are the gaps in stopping us getting to a framework? What's the disagreements that are still there that have stopped us getting there? And can we be sure it really is flexible and it's taking away unnecessary reporting burdens? And the final bit is, what happens operationally if we get into the new financial year and the framework isn't agreed and signed?
Thank you. And to your point about flexibility and freedoms, that's why I'm very pleased that this government have brought in the right to request through the Mayor's Council. So we will be able to, where appropriate, request new freedoms and flexibilities. But this is a long way from where we were. And frankly, there are MCAs that really want this integrated settlement. So it was a real win for us to prove that maturity to be able to deliver on an integrated settlement. But Sarah, do you want to respond to a couple of those questions?
Yeah, I think flexibility is the reason why we've spent quite a bit of time making sure that we get the measures right and negotiating on the measures. I think we've tried to keep those as minimal as we possibly can to make sure that we have got flexibility to deliver activity that benefits West Yorkshire region and aligns to our plans actually. So we've done quite a lot of work in this space to I think get to that position, and as the Mayor outlined, we've also done quite a lot of work with other MSAs, particularly the Trailblazers. We've got experience of this and have been running for a year with their 1 year integrated settlement. So there's been quite a lot of work done in that space. I think in terms of areas, I think it's the timing. It's getting a quantum at the end of November and then having to kind of negotiate targets. So, and we have to do those bilateral conversations with different government departments. So it's just the challenge of making sure that we're aligning what we think we can spend and being proportionate in terms of the indicators with the targets that we're agreeing. I think we've been looking at the housing targets and the housing measures, so there's been a little bit of delay around that and some technical guidance that's come through, but we're hoping that we've freed that up now and we can kind of progress and move forward. I don't think there will be a delay in terms of getting there. I think we're confident that we will get there by kind of the end of January in terms of getting everything sorted and signed off. And if there's any slippage, I think it will be at a national level and we'll be in line with in other areas in that space. So as I say, we've done quite a bit of work to make sure that we do hit the deadlines, and we've met every deadline that we've been given actually in terms of being able to submit something. I think moving forward, I think this is around that devolution journey, and it's not resting on our laurels in terms of being able to kind of work with the government to push this into the next phase, and we're already starting to think about what that might look like, particularly working with the other established mayoral authorities that are in this space. So I think just because we're at this point, that doesn't mean that we don't kind of put that foot on, keep our foot on the pedal in terms of being able to kind of push for more. So we're definitely, once we've got this little bit over the line, that's the next stage of this process that we'll be looking at.
Thank you so much, Ben.
Thank you, Jay. Just to build on what Sarah has been saying, and to, I guess, add a note of caution. So the outcome framework is exactly where we're trying to get to, but as you'll see when you look at the annex, they're not all outcomes. Some of them are still outputs, and so there's still work to do in future years about that. Secondly, each of those pillars and the funding streams, they come with their own strings. So we've got more or less freedom on some of them compared to others. So there's still work to do in that space. But as Sarah says, what this is a first step on that journey. And I think, as the Mayor has said, the presence of the Mayoral Council, where mayors are able to continue to keep the pressure on central government to continue to give us more freedoms and flexibilities. We hope that will prevent any reversion back to the kind of scenario that you've outlined, Councillor.
We've had reassurance from government this is the floor, not the ceiling on devolution. So we are on the foothills. Fast forward 5 years, it will feel and look very different. But we have to get over this this phase. Was that fingers crossed, or did you want to speak? Oh, fingers crossed. Thank you. Okay, I am very minded of the time. I've been a terrible chair, and we are slightly behind time. Can the CA note the progress made to develop a broader outcomes framework for the CA and an integrated settlement outcomes framework? Note the proposal to circulate the updated integrated settlement targets to combined authority members for comment before ministerial and mayoral sign-off. Can that be agreed? And that the final integrated settlement outcomes framework be brought back to the meeting of the CA in March this year for endorsement, and that the CA approve the approach to updating the West Yorkshire Local Growth Plan in line with government statutory guidance. In favour of the recommendations, please raise your hand. Thank you. Any against? Any abstaining? No, thank you. Moving on. Item 9, Innovation Plan, Local Innovation Partnership Fund. September meeting of the CA, it was agreed an innovation board is established to provide strategic oversight and guidance on innovation activity. The remit of the board includes responsibility for the Local Innovation Partnership Fund, a £30 million fund from UKRI to support innovation clusters and drive economic growth. If I'd like to pass to Councillor James Lewis as Chair of the Economy Board before going over to Felix Kumian-Pofo to talk about the board's recommendation for an innovation plan. So, Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. I was certainly pointing to Felix there, but you didn't pick it up. So just a few words of introduction. A few words of introduction on this, and then ask Felix to come in. I think it is the recognises the work we've done on the Economy Committee, and it's Mandy knows as well. It's a great group of people around the table at the Economy Committee as well to bring forward work like this and make sure we're looking at the outcomes we want to achieve for West Yorkshire, but we're getting the voice of training providers and business in that in doing that.
Thank you. That's that training providers and skills is particularly important around innovation. Felix.
Thank you very much, Mayor. In the interest of time, I'll take the hint. I will not go through the whole paper. I'm just taking it as read. Just a really quick comment. So I'm sure the board will remember in the local growth plan, the evidence was really clear that our economy still had a headroom of about £11 billion, and that our productivity, our performance on productivity was a key reason why this was the case. Not the only reason, but a key reason why this was the case. Economists are united that to grow productivity, we need to drive innovation. And so in the local growth plan, we did, the combined authority committed to West Yorkshire becoming a centre of excellence for innovation. And as the Mayor said, you gave us approval then to set up an innovation board to spearhead and help us drive this activity. It's worth saying that the region has been investing in innovation activities for a number of years. We have our investment zone program, which has been running for a few years now. The Mayor's Big Ideas Challenge is underway. We have our innovation festival that takes place every year. The Local Innovation Partnership Fund is therefore just one funding stream that will help us do more in this space. We are one of a few areas, MSAs, in the country that has been given earmarked status, so we are not competing for this amount of money. It's a minimum of £30 million. However, to be able to access that, we need to go through certain hoops. So we are in the middle of readiness checks with UK Research and Innovation, UKRI, and at the end of that, we then have to submit our investment program, which has to go in by the end of May. The reason this paper has come to you, it's got two recommendations. One, UKRI is a prerequisite that the Innovation Board is able to sign off that investment plan. And so we are requesting a delegation from here to that board for us to be able to do that. Otherwise, we will not be able to access the money. And then secondly, the Innovation Board, which is already met twice, has a third meeting later this month, agreed for us to develop an innovation plan so that as further funding becomes available, we are not looking around asking ourselves what to do with it. We already have a plan with a set of activities or gaps identified, and we know what to do, and we can move quickly. And so again, we are seeking your permission, as it were, for us to be able to get on and do that work. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I wonder, Mandy, if there's anything you'd like to comment, because innovation is the driver of growth. That's our challenge across the whole of our region. Mandy.
Yes, I mean, obviously the Innovation Board is there to help drive growth, and R&D investment as a percentage of GDP has to go up in some way, shape or form to help drive that growth. So I'm delighted that the two proposed chairs of that board are both from a business background and are significant people in the region with innovation well and truly under their belts. And what I'd like to just make sure that we are mindful of is that innovation doesn't only happen in universities, that is a very important part of the innovation puzzle, but it happens in businesses and in people, and the work that we're doing with the Mayor's Challenge and more widely around business support and bringing together Team West Yorkshire to link businesses to universities is an important part of that puzzle.
Thank you. That's a great contribution. Thank you. Okay, any further thoughts? Yes, Councillor Lamb.
Thank you. I support the broad aims of this, but I've got 4 quick concerns. Mandy has hit on one of them, which is around making sure this isn't just money going to the usual suspects, and it's actually providing direct support to SMEs in particular, to give them the chance to innovate and grow. The second one is just around accountability, and no disrespect to Ben, but this is a lot of money to put in his hands, and I'm just concerned that there's not enough democratic oversight of this, and I wonder if we can look at a way that doesn't complicate, slow things down, but just making sure there is a democratic sense check to it. The third one is back to, there's a lot of broad outcomes here, but I think we need to see real measurable KPIs so that we know exactly what it is that we're trying to achieve with the money before things get going. And the final one, and Councillor Lewis will shout at me for saying this, there's also a risk that this funding gets concentrated on Leeds, and making sure that every part of the combined authority actually benefits from it, and we don't just centre it. As much as I'd like all the money in Leeds, it's actually to the whole region's benefit if everyone is getting a slice of this.
This is a strategic investment for the whole of West Yorkshire, so please be reassured. Felix.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for those questions. I should have said earlier on, there's a human error in the paper. The box for key decision should not have been ticked yes. This is not a key decision. It should have been no. We will correct that when the papers come out. So that's our failing. Apologies. Regarding SMEs, as in every other part of the country, SMEs make up 98% of our business base. It is impossible for us to do something like this without SMEs benefiting significantly. So we would definitely, that will definitely happen, but we don't know yet. We haven't pulled together the investment program, so we don't know yet how all of this will take place. It's important, however, to emphasize this is about innovation-intensive activity, and so that will certain companies that have innovative in their ways of working will be more likely to benefit from it. But our job here is to drive that through the rest of the economy to make sure more and more companies do that. Democratic oversight, so paragraph 3.5 in the paper does say that the head of page service, if you are minded to provide that delegation, will discharge that working with the mayor and the chair of the economic committee, both of whom are elected members, and we will come back here for every meeting to make sure you are fully updated and you've got all the information that you need. Leeds bias, it goes without saying that this is for the whole region, and so we'll make sure. It's important, however, to say that as a standing start, Leeds does have the most developed innovation ecosystem. Our job is to make sure the rest of West Yorkshire catches up to that and achieves its full potential.
Thank you, well said. Ben?
I'll say this out loud just to check whether colleagues agree with me, but my understanding, Councillor Lamb, in terms of accountability, is that this fund isn't part of the single settlement. The accountability still sits with UKRI. That's why the paper's quite carefully worded in terms of responsibility. So this is not funding that's being devolved to us. We are seeking to influence how UKRI spends the money.
This is what I wanted to devolve, because they are another set of gatekeepers that we have to conform to their timelines and their expected outcomes. So it would be great if we had the money ourselves and we could do what we wanted, but it is not in our gift currently. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, just to say this was one of the areas that we've submitted a right to request for in terms of being able to get that kind of funding and responsibility coming direct to the CA. So it's an area that we're lobbying on at the moment.
Okay, I have been the most terrible chair that it is after 12:30 and there's so much to get through. So I'm going to be nice and succinct from now on. So there's, can we recommend the CA approves the Innovation Board's recommendation for an innovation plan to be developed, and that delegated authority is granted to the head of paid service in conjunction with the Mayor and the chair of the Economy Committee for the Local Innovation Partnership Fund in West Yorkshire. In favour of recommendations, please lift your hand. Thank you. Anybody against? Anybody abstaining? No, thank you. Moving on, item 10. This is the draft Sustainable Business Growth Plan, which sets out how West Yorkshire is going to support businesses and industry to decarbonise while strengthening productivity, competitiveness and inclusive economic growth. It's partnership-led delivery, targeted support for energy-intensive sectors, and a focus on skills, innovation and energy resilience and security, and establishes a clear regional framework to help businesses of all sizes and our region to benefit economically from the clean energy transition to contribute to the achievement of net zero economy by 2038. Would Councillor Lewis like to say a few words in opening this item?
Pass over to officers.
Fantastic. Passing over to Felix to take us through the recommendations. Thank you so much, Felix.
Thank you, Mayor. As the Mayor just said, this paper comes with the attached draft plan for your consideration, and if you are minded to then approve for us to get on with the delivery. When the Climate and Environment Plan was put together, it made it very clear our emissions broadly fall into 3 areas: transport, consumers, households, and business. This plan takes a look at the business side, and it puts a case forward for how, as a region, we can work with our businesses to be more competitive, to be resilient, to improve energy security and resilience, and to support businesses to decarbonize. And so if you are minded to, if this is approved, our delivery will then follow on from that. It's important to say finally that not everything here is about what the combined authority itself will do. This is about what needs to be done in the region, and there will be actions that will come out of this, which the combined authority itself will take a lead on, but many of the actions will fall on other partners. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we have so many businesses that are heavy industry, that are very energy intensive, that hopefully this will be helpful. Mandy, anything you'd like to comment?
Yes, I think the paper is really welcome, and I think how we try and influence the change to enabling businesses to access clean green energy is a problem from across the country, and we need to try and lean on that and try and expedite that as soon as we can, because whilst businesses mostly want to get on this agenda, then accessing that energy is one of the constraints that would change the dial considerably.
Thank you. Any further comments, Councillor Lamb?
I'll help you by rationalising my 7 questions to 3 very quickly. So what specific funding streams will support businesses to deliver the actions in the plan? How will we make sure that SMEs receive equal access to this support rather than the benefits accruing to the big boys, which is what usually happens? And what
and
is
girls, Councillor Lamb.
big people. What is being done to address the region's acute skills shortages in green technologies?
Thank you. Some nice big questions there. Felix, a few headlines, and then maybe we could talk about skills in more detail outside of this meeting.
I take the hint. Funding streams. So this is not like what we've done in the past, where we see a problem, we put a bit of money aside, we have a grant program, we disperse that to businesses in the expectation that they act in a certain way. This is the combined authority setting out to act as a system leader, bring partners together to understand what the challenge looks like, and then work together as a partnership to work through what the solutions are. And if the solution requires us to go seek funding, then that is what we work with partners to do. But this plan is not written to say there's a particular pot of money and we're going to use that to do A, B, or C. It's setting out the combined authority as a matured organization to play its role as a system leader. The budget item that comes after this sets out what our budget for the next year, where there is the need for us to spend money to help deliver this. That budget will allow us to do that. But we are not setting out to work in the way that we've done in the past. In terms of SMEs, I suppose what I've said before comes in, but also I'd really like to take a conversation outside of here because it seems to be a common theme that SMEs miss out on what we do, and actually it's the big companies that benefit. I have seen no evidence to say that is true, but I would like to pick that up and see if there's anything else we can do to put that issue to bed. And if we are failing, obviously we will pick that up. But I have no evidence. It's actually much to the contrary. In terms of our acute skills shortage, we'll take it out of here, but we do, as part of our adult skills plan, which you were kind enough to approve before Christmas, we do put out distinct training programs where the need is identified in our key sectors, and the green economy is one of them.
Very good. And certainly the recommendations from the Green Jobs Task Force, you'll remember, Councillor Lamb, one of them was going into primary schools to talk about green jobs, because it's really important we get young people to have conversations with their parents even before they get to secondary school. So be reassured that is a priority, that pipeline of talent. Yes, Councillor Holdsworth.
Just a quick question. Excuse me, Mayor. How is this going to be marketed to SMEs across the whole of West Yorkshire, please, so that they are aware of the scheme and what they can do to implement it?
Good question. Felix.
Thank you. Very good question. So the marketing channel or strategy depends on what it is that we are putting out and who we need to engage with. And as I said, this is a higher level plan, so we don't have a marketing plan next to it yet. But at the right time, when there is a particular scheme, we engage with SMEs through all our channels, whether it's through the business representative bodies that we are setting up affiliate arrangements with, through our social media and different events that we put together. We target SMEs because they make up over 98% of our business base. So we disproportionately target SMEs. I have no worry that we will not. Where there's sometimes a challenge is that some businesses are better connected than others, and so they hear of things and others might not. And we all have a job to do to make sure that businesses that usually might feel they miss out of this have as good a chance as anyone else to take advantage of that. We work with the business board and others to make sure that we can reach out as well as we can.
Thank you. It's often word of mouth and recommendation, isn't it? Business to business. Did you want to come in, Mandy?
Just very briefly, but the business board have an ambassadorial role, so that is part of what we do. Each of the cluster groups, including the local visitor economy partnership, are doing work around how we develop better comms plans around these things. So this access to knowledge is really important, and bring in Reset Connect here in March to the armories, which is a big event, a bit like Reef, but with this subject in mind, is part of drawing attention to this region and being able to communicate widely, which I think all highlights and escalates the focus on this for businesses.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Okie dokie. Are we happy to approve the recommendation that the Combined Authority considers and approves the draft Clean, Secure, Resilient, Driving Sustainable Business Growth Plan? And 2, that the Combined Authority delegates further evolution and delivery of this plan to the Economy Committee with engagement with the Climate and Environment Committee. All those in favour of the recommendations, please raise your hand. Thank you. And those abstaining? Those against? Thank you so much. Okay, moving on to item 11, the substantial item, well, one of many in the agenda today. And can I just say thank you for your focus. We're over halfway through this meeting. It's scheduled to finish at 1:30, so thank you very much for your sustained attention. So, item 11, the budget. As I mentioned earlier, the first budget we'll be setting under our new integrated settlement, and what we've got in front of us is the 26-27 budget and draft directorate business plans on a page for consideration. The full corporate plan for 26-27 will come to the next CA meeting for approval. Now, the single settlement means we've more money available to us as a combined authority than we've ever had before. The total budget for next year alone is 1.25 billion. Just think about that for West Yorkshire, and you would not have that without devolution, without a mayor. 487.3 million revenue spend, 767 million capital expenditure. This is a budget that will drive growth, opportunity across the region, that's going to continue my commitment to deliver, and help us improve the Weaver network, continue to deliver mass transit, and keep funding adult skills and jobs programmes to ensure people and businesses are able to thrive and grow. Employment West Yorkshire, our business growth hub. We've resources to deliver new homes, deliver transport capital programmes across the region, and committing the CA resources to deliver my police and crime plan. On top of our new Home Energy West Yorkshire service, which will be helping people in our region access the government's new Warm Homes plan, helping to insulate homes, reduce bills and lower carbon emissions. And of course, our investments into culture, the creative industries, delivering programmes such as Libraries for Primaries, our phenomenal Young Poet Laureate scheme that's now rolled out across the country, and our new Seasons of Culture programme across the region. When we were updated on our financial position last year, there was a moment when we were projecting a deficit of almost 40 million. But thanks to prudent financial management and more details coming through on a single settlement, the new funding streams like the Local Growth Fund as well, we are able to fill that gap. We're having to use a one-off contribution from our reserves to do this, ensuring we can continue to invest in the bus network. It's a one-off because this will be the final financial year when we are not in control of the bus network. At the beginning of the next financial year, we will be in control of over a third of the Weaver network and taking over the second tranche later in the year. It's going to transform how we finance the bus network, as we will be in control of the fare box, meaning we can take decisions for passengers rather than for profit. So in front of us today are really ambitious plans, only possible because of the new devolution settlement we have. We have greater flexibility on how we spend the money because of our integrated settlement. Now, I'm not proposing we use the full range of flexibility in this first year. I'm not recommending we move money between pillars, but I'm not against doing this in the future. What we're doing is holding the flexibility to transfer some capital funding into revenue, which may help us to accelerate delivery. If we do need to do this, we'll come back to the CA for approval. Now, a lot of work, as you can imagine, has gone into the preparation of the budget, and I'd like to really thank from the bottom of my heart the entire finance team for their hard work. And on that note, I'd like to hand across to Kate Taylor, our Director of Finance and Commercial Services, to take us through the detailed report and recommendations. Kate.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for that. Thanks as well. I would say it is an absolute team effort. It is the finance team, obviously, control kind of getting to this point, but we do require the entire business to engage with us to get there. So as set out, this paper has got two purposes, which is A, setting out the 26-27 both revenue and capital budget, and also presenting those draft plans on a page. There is a housekeeping item, which is the first recommendation, which is asking for approval for changes to the 25-26, so the current year budget. Those changes were endorsed by FRCC in November, but come here for approval as required under the Constitution. As set out, the budget sets out a revenue budget of 487.3 million to be spent within 26-27. Within their transport expenditure totals 250.8 million, and that is supported and funded in part by the transport levy of 99.9 million. That has increased by 2% on the prior year, in line with previous commitments in the bus franchising assessment, with the additional £1.96 million of income being used to support bus reform. The levy is split between districts based on a population, and that is set out in the paper. And following approval, we will notify district partners of their levy for the year. The paper also confirms a mayoral budget of 0.9 million. That is in line with the proposal put forward in December. I can confirm we have received no questions or further proposals from the combined authority for that, and hence it is presented as part of the total budget for the approval. It also states there is no mayoral precept. As noted, the budget is balanced through use of 13.5 million of one-off reserves, which are applied in full to balance the transport position. As the report notes, this is our last financial year of presenting the transport budget in this way as a result of franchising. The CA still has general reserves of 15.2, where am I writing that, and earmark reserves of 42 million, providing financial resilience. The capital programme budget of 767 million is proposed, which includes the last year of the City Regional Sustainable Transport Settlement, CRSTS. We have continued to work with partners to prioritise that programme and ensure that we maximise that funding. That, alongside the results of bus franchising and the year-end outturn for the current year, will be brought forward in a revised budget for approval in the summer. Section 4 of the report sets out the short and medium-term risks, and it also includes my statutory advice for you as the Section 73 officer required under Section 25 of the Local Government Act as to the robustness of the assumptions and the adequacy of reserves. I confirm to you today that that statement still stands, and there is nothing since the publishing of the papers that would make me change that statement. The report also asks the CA to note the work that needs to happen over 2026 to review the MTFP, particularly to reflect the impact of bus franchising. Those discussions will continue to happen over 2026 and come forward in summer and autumn. Finally, the report presents those draft plans on a page for consideration, and those will then form the basis of the corporate plan that will come back to you in March for approval, concluding the integrated business planning process.
Thank you so much. And whilst the numbers are big, the public need to see transformation from these investments. So we will be working flat out to deliver on the Weaver network and to progress work on mass transit to deliver transformation for our communities, housing and also culture, etc., as we've heard. So any thoughts on the budget discussion? Councillor Lamb.
Yep, thank you, Mayor. A couple of comments and then a small number of questions. So the first one is to thank Kate and her team for the work that they've done, and I'm really grateful for the. I feel the process is more transparent and open, and that's very helpful and welcome. So thank you. I know how much work has to go into this. The second point is. I'm not sure we can properly do justice to scrutinising the budget in this forum, and you wouldn't thank me if I went into the level of detail that I might like to. It would be helpful going forward if we could, for future budgets, if perhaps there can be more opportunities for board members and scrutiny to be involved earlier in the process, so that it's not simply a nodding through exercise here. It shouldn't be that, but equally it isn't the forum. And we're already under huge time pressure with all the other items. I could ask 50 questions on the budget, but so hopefully that's something that can be taken on board for future years. The key things that I think it's important just to explore a bit further today, it is a tight budget, relying on reserves, as you said. The first thing is, are you comfortable with the level of reserves that we have? It seems low in proportion to the budget, and is there a plan over coming years to build the reserves back up? The second thing is around the assumptions in it. So it's very tight around inflation. So if there was to be a jump in inflation around some of the capital projects, what resilience is in the budget around that? I suspect most members of the public don't realise that when we talk about the transport levy and things like that, that's out of their council tax. So that's an extra pressure on councils. I believe the commitment that was made last year was that the levy was expected to increase by 2% every year for the foreseeable future, which is an extra pressure that councils have got to bear and council taxpayers have got to bear. There was brief mention of a mayoral precept which isn't proposed. Are you comfortable to rule that out for the 3-year lifetime of, I can't rule anything out forever, but as things stand, are you happy to say no mayoral precept within this 3-year period? There's lots of other questions, but I think they're the headline ones.
Thank you. And to your point about where the discussion on the budget happens, I think the FRCC has given it a really detailed once over. But as we're looking at the governance review, I think your point is well made about where do people get sight of the budget and how can they influence it or at least get across it. I'd also like to agree with you about the papers. I think they're really much more accessible. There's more detail. I do agree that Kate, you coming in, I think you've brought a new approach, which I think is really welcome. To the other points regarding the precept, we are not, as it says in the paper, we're not bringing a precept. I've always said the precept will come in when it is of something that will benefit the public directly. And also regarding the levy, the transport levy, we have kept that flat for many years since I was mayor, whereas other mayoral combined authorities, they've seen their precept go up and up and up every year. We've tried to keep it as flat as possible until we have needed it in order to deliver better outcomes for the public, because having that argument to the public, if you pay a little bit more, you'll actually get a bus at the end of your road and a bus that's on time and green and clean and affordable fares, I think is of value. And also, just to reiterate, we have kept down bus fares below the national cap since we brought in Mayor's Fares, since we were the first to bring in Mayor's Fares. We have still a £2.50 rather than the national cap of £3, so we understand the cost of living argument. But Kate, would you like to come in on the further points?
Thank you. Just around the transport levy, slight technicality. Actually, it's not all out of people's council tax, so there is money that is passed over from DFT to a CLG that comes in the Section 31 grant as well, which covers the concessionary element in there for it. In terms of reserves, we have, as I said, 15.2 million sitting in general reserves, which is around 3% of the general expenditure. General practice or good practice would be to have around 3 to 5%. So while we are at the lower end, actually meeting that 3% is a good place to be in, and a lot of both local authorities and MSAs do struggle to even get to that 3%. So that is helpful. That helps me cushion against in-year kind of fiscal shocks. So, God forbid we have another kind of pandemic or exception. So I have that. Then we have earmarked. Then we have the earmarked reserves that sit there, which are for more of our, some of our medium and risks that we have. What we will be looking to do as we do that MTFP refresh over the summer is we will bring forward again a proposal for how we will treat those reserves and how we will start to match them against those risks that we have. Where we have any kind of any movement in the budget in the year where the surplus goes up, certainly I will have to bring that forward to FRCC and Combined Authority for final treatment. My recommendation at the moment would be that we continue to build up the reserves to mitigate some of those future risks in there, but that will be a decision for a later time. So I am comfortable, as I have to be, that we have sufficient based on what we have now. Certainly I would always hope that we can continue to build more within there. In terms of the inflation point, where it is inflation on the capital programme, my first expectation is that we would manage within the capital programme, and we would have to take from where we had not already kind of allocated money within that. So it would kind of come within itself rather than hitting into my reserves for that. So I think there's a question around the mayoral precept as well, which is your decision.
Okay, any further comments on the budget? No? Great stuff, thank you. Okie dokie. So I'm going to read out all the recommendations because it's the budget in its entirety. So do bear with me. So recommendations that we approve the outline budget changes for 25-26, that they are adopted as per section 3.1, 3.2 and 3.3. Approve the revenue budget for 26-27 totalling 487.3 million as set out in this report. Approve an increase in the transport levy from 97.9 million to 99.9 million, an increase of 2%, and authorises the Section 73 officer to issue the levy letters for year ending the 31st of March 2027. Approve the mayoral office budget of 0.9 million for 26-27 and note that there will be no mayoral precept. Approve the use of reserves as set out in the paper section 3.16. Approve the first year 26-27 of the indicative capital programme totalling 767 million as set out in 3.17.01, noting the indicative onward programme thereafter. Note and have regard to the advice of the Director of Finance and Commercial Services Section 73 officer in relation to the robustness of the budget and the adequacy of reserves as set out in 4.3 to 4.7. To delegate authority to combined authority officers to progress expenditure within this budget that is in furtherance of combined authority financial regulation and schemes of delegation, that the combined authority notes the current medium-term financial plan, its risks and uncertainties, in particular those arising from bus franchising, and endorses the proposed approach to further financial planning and mitigations work during the first half of 2026, with an update to be brought back to the CA summer 2026, section 4.1, that the combined authority consider the draft directorate plans on a page and notes that final draft plans and the overarching corporate plan for 26-27 will be presented to the March 2026 combined authority for approval, section 3.9 and 13.18. All those in favour of the recommendations.
So I can say that again, please.
Very funny. Yeah, very good. Those in favour of the recommendations, please raise your hand. Thank you. Those abstaining? Those against? Thank you so much. Brilliant. Let's move on to project approvals. Good jobs and resilient businesses, including entrepreneurialism. This is looking at 2 approvals from our economy team relating to our investment zone and the economic inactivity trailblazer. If I could ask Felix to pick up both of these schemes for consideration.
Thank you very much, Mayor. The first one has to do with the investment zone program, which I referred to earlier on. It's seeking approval from you for us to put in place what we're calling a soft landing package. This allows us to provide even more support to businesses that are either in health tech or digital and tech, which is what our investment zone program covers. It ensures that we're able to support businesses to land in West Yorkshire, somewhere to put their equipment, connect them into the right networks, make sure they are plugged into our clusters, and they receive all the support that they need. It ensures that we are able to compete with other places when we are working to attract businesses to come into West Yorkshire. We will work with our universities who have both the capability and the capacity to do this, and is seeking £1.6 million for us to be able to do that. And to preempt potentially a question from Councillor Lamb about SMEs, this is exclusively for SMEs.
Very good, Felix. So, any comments on these schemes? was hoping you'd come in, Councillor Lamb. You thought about it twice, but then you thought, no, I must speak. Councillor Lamb.
It's not that I must speak. It's a lot of money we're spending, Mayor, and it's right that we ask questions about it. And it's good to see officers now anticipating and answering questions before they're asked. It's a bit like a two Ronnies sketch I remember in Mastermind. So I wasn't going to ask that actually this time. But my two questions were, A, can we be assured this is it in terms of funding? None of these schemes are going to come back and ask for more. And on the economic inactivity trailblazer, easy to say, what proportion of participants do you expect to achieve sustained employment, and how are we measuring that?
Thank you. And to be frank, good questions. So Felix.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I talked about the first one or the second one, so I'm happy to say a bit more about the inactivity trailblazer. But for the soft landing package, yes, businesses will only be entitled to the support once, because obviously they only land here once. I don't know whether you are referring to businesses being eligible for wider financial support from the combined authority, and if that is what you mean, then I'll politely refer members to last year's decision you made regarding our new access to finance approach and the way in which we are changing how we engage with businesses and support them to access finance. There will be much less that the combined authority itself is putting out in the form of grants for businesses. We are as that model showed at the time, we are embarking on a completely different approach where we support businesses to access the funding that is out there instead of us all the time setting ourselves up to do that. Regarding the inactivity trailblazer, which I beg your pardon, I should have talked about then, we already have phase one of the trailblazer up and running. The government gave us £10 million. This is part of our Healthy Working Life program, of which we've got a governance program that you approved from this board. We have a program board that I co-chair with the ICB, and we have a strategic board that the mayor, again, co-chairs with the ICB. And as part of that, there are various funding streams. This is one of them, and this is the phase two. This is year two funding, not phase two, year two funding, another £10 million. It helps us to support people who are economically inactive and support them to come into employment or closer into employment. We are also able to support people who are in work but at risk of falling out because of health reasons, to be able to remain in work and receive the support they need to get all the benefits that come with being in employment. We have a lot of targets from central government. The overriding target is to slow down the rate of increase in economic inactivity, of which we have over 100,000 people in West Yorkshire, to slow down that rate of increase and eventually to begin to bring that number down. I'm happy out of here to have a conversation, if needs be, about the details in terms of our outputs and outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you, Felix. Was there a clear target from government? Was it 1,300?
Yes, there's a 1,300 number, but that is not strictly to do with the trailblazer alone. It picks up also the accelerator. I just didn't want to go into all of that because of the time we've got, but yes.
Thank you. We have to stop people falling out of work as well as getting more people into work. And many people have complex lives and complex problems. It's a hard ask, but the Healthy Working Life Board is proving a really good forum for delivery in this space. And I'd just like to put on record my thanks to Rob Webster, who's the Chief Executive of the ICB, who's now stepping down. He has been really a great partner in how we've worked really agile, with real agility and at speed to set up the board and get to work. So just wanted to put on record my thanks to him. Thank you, Felix. Any further comments? Okie doke. So the recommendations. Can we approve for the two schemes outlined, as we've heard, to progress through to the assurance process, full approvals for the combined authorities funding contribution for delivery and development costs, and approval of future assurance pathways and approval routes, and obviously the detailed recommendations are in the report. In favour of the recommendations, please raise your hand. Thank you. Anyone against? Anyone abstaining? Thank you so much. We are nearly there, folks. Item 12B. This is tackling the climate emergency and environmental sustainability. This report provides information about release of capital funding for investment zone linked to the Brownfield Housing Fund, and 2 additional approvals include for the Brownfield Housing Fund and the Heat Network Zone Coordination Body Scheme. I'd like to invite Councillor Scullion to say a few words on the Heat Network Zone Coordination Body Scheme, if you were minded to, and if not, pass over to Liz Hunter, Director of Policing, Environment and Place, to outline the schemes. Councillor Scullion.
Thank you, Mayor. I could go on about district heating networks, but I will pass over straight to the officer. Liz.
Thank you. In light of the time, just to briefly run through, because the paper covers a number of the things as you've mentioned. So firstly, on the Brownfield Housing Fund, as you know, we have an extension to the programme which you approved last year, and this paper brings forward 3 schemes for different reasons, have taken longer than expected, but we'd still like to include them in the programme. So this is a change to ask that those tolerances are changed to enable them still to be within the programme. There is also then a specific Brownfield Housing Fund scheme in front of you for Castleford Baths at a 759,000 for 69 homes, which are 100% affordable. Separately then, as you mentioned, we have an investment zone scheme before you today for Turnbridge Mills. This is the opportunity to create a med tech facility within that historic mill, and we're looking for your agreement today for the funding for that project to come forward. And then lastly, as mentioned about heat zoning, so this is one of those areas where we know that there are district heat networks already in place. We've got them in Leeds, there's space in the ground in Bradford, and we've got various ones in development in other places. And what government are now asking for is that there is a degree of coordination around how those heat networks come forward, so that they can be maximised. We don't yet know what kind of that coordination looks like. We don't know what we would be asked to be if we were to be one of these bodies. But government are engaging with us on the methodology. And as always, we always say, well, if you want us to do extra, how can you help us fund us to do that work? And so in this instance, they have provided us some funding to at least do that investigation work. And we will come back to you once we've done that to decide if we should be a body or not. And we're also, in the meantime, working very closely with Leeds in particular, who will look at a consultation around that particular element of it. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm pleased with Leeds Pipes and with Huddersfield and Bradford leading the way on some of this work. It's great to see. Any questions on this? No? Mark, Councillor Hinchcliffe.
Just to briefly say, so I see something I'm quite interested in, that the one in Bradford, it's basically well out of the ground now actually, because obviously it's all down. People thought it was just pedestrianisation. There wasn't. There was heat pipes going in there at the same time as well. So we're really pleased about that. Bradford Council has not put any money in it. It's private sector investment and national government investment. So all these are funded through different ways. So in our instance, government have been more qualified to coordinate rather than ourselves really here in West Yorkshire, because it is a lot of private sector investment in partnership with national government. So anyway, I'll pause there just for a second. Thank you.
Very interesting, thank you. And certainly they're looking across the country and trying to get a unified approach, I think, and we're just part of that. But it's good to see that we're ahead of the game. Good stuff, thank you. So are we happy to approve the 2 schemes, the Investment Zones Capital, Turnbridge Mills and Brownfield Housing Fund, Castleford Baths, outlined above, to progress through the assurance process, full approvals of the CA's funding contribution for delivery and development costs, and approval of future assurance pathways and approval routes? Those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. Those against? Those abstaining? No, thank you. Okie doke. Can I also ask for the approval for the second Brownfield Housing Fund programme change request to extend delivery timescales as outlined above? In favour of the recommendation? Thank you. And those against? Abstaining? None. Thank you. And the final approval of the CA's funding contribution to the Heat Network Zone Coordination Body Scheme to enter into a funding agreement. Please raise your hand if you're in approval. And those against? Anyone abstaining? No. Thank you so much. Thank you for powering through the hand-raising moment. Okay, moving on. to 12C, delivering sustainable, integrated and inclusive and affordable transport. This is details of 5 transport schemes coming to us for approval. I'm going to take them one by one in this instance and call on Simon Pope, Transport Capital Programme Director, then Rachel Jones, Head of Mobility Services, to outline the schemes individually. So first off, Leeds Healthier Streets. Simon, can you take us through this, please?
Thank you, Mayor. This is the outline business case for an £11 million scheme involving the delivery of new and improved walking and cycling infrastructure across 6 neighbourhoods in Leeds. The scheme aims to increase walking and cycling by 10% and improve road safety through reducing road casualties by up to 30%. The scheme's been assessed as offering medium value for money with a benefit to cost ratio of 1.98 to 1, reflective of the journey quality and health benefits afforded to both pedestrians and cyclists. Smaller scale interventions in Chapeltown, Victoria Park and Wortley are now ready for delivery, for which £1.8 million in funding is recommended for immediate release. Larger scale interventions in Crossgates, Armley and Inner East Leeds will take longer to develop, for which the release of £1 million to cover further development costs is recommended in order to develop the full business case. Subject to those final costs remaining within the tolerances that are set out in the paper, we're also recommending that future approval of that full business case is delegated to the Chief Executive.
Thank you so much. In the interest of time, I'm hoping there are not questions as we rattle through this, so we have time for mass transit. Thank you, Councillor Lamb. Brilliant. So can we raise our hands in favour of the recommendations? Please raise your hands if you're in favour. If you're against, anyone abstaining? Thank you so much. The next item is the Leeds City Centre Network and Interchange Package, Leeds City Square Plus. Simon, if you wouldn't mind just giving us a light touch on this change request. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. So members will be familiar with the City Square Plus scheme that was delivered on site and completed last year. This approval relates to a retrospective request for additional funding from Leeds City Council due to exceptional circumstances encountered during delivery. Additional costs have been incurred from redesign to part of the scheme to allow direct access to the Queen's Hotel frontage following a change in the hotel's ownership, with the revised scheme then subsequently encountering issues during delivery. Additional counter-terrorism measures to mitigate the risk of hostile vehicles were also introduced in response to the change in design and updates to the later counter-terrorism guidance. Whilst cost increases in delivery aren't typically supported if these are demonstrated to result from a lack of rigour in the development process, following significant scrutiny by the Combined Authority to validate the additional costs requested, we are recommending a £668,000 increase in funding is approved in this instance. That's a 6% increase on the Combined Authority's original contribution, but we feel that is appropriate given the mitigating circumstances that apply in this case.
Thank you so much. Those in favour of the recommendation, please raise your hand. Those against? Those abstaining? Thank you. The next item is the Local Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Levite Capability Scheme. Simon, thank you.
So the scheme aims to accelerate installation of EV charging infrastructure across the region. The Combined Authority has previously approved capital funding for charge point rollout that involves partnering with private sector operators to deliver charge points in locations that would otherwise be commercially viable. Procurement of the charge point operator has been very successful, and with a higher private sector contribution than was originally forecast, we're now able to deliver a much greater number of charge points than it was originally proposed. The recommended approval relates to separate revenue funding that's been granted by the Office for Zero Emission Vehicles to fund the necessary resources to deliver the now larger programme. An additional £539,000 has been awarded, which is proposed to split between the district partners and the Combined Authority to cover associated legal, procurement, project management and highway costs. The approval also recommends the acceptance and allocation of additional funding, together with an extension of time for programme delivery from June 2026 to April 2028.
Thank you for speaking at speed, Simon. Thank you. Those in favour of the recommendations? Thank you. Those against? Anyone abstaining? No, thank you. So, Rachel, sorry, you're going to have to be quick. Access bus fleet replacement. If you could talk us through this plan, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. As many of you are probably aware, the Combined Authorities Access Bus Service is a dial-a-ride bus service providing door-to-door transport in West Yorkshire, which has been operating now for over 35 years. It's got around 6,700 registered users. It aims in particular to serve the needs of those people in West Yorkshire who have difficulty in accessing the general bus network. It currently operates on a many people going to one venue, including things like shopping trip opportunities, luncheon clubs and other social clubs as well. Continues to be a very popular service and is something that is constantly at or close to capacity. Now, given the customer demographic, a bespoke type of vehicle is required, one that's small enough to get down some of our sort of small streets that we've got across West Yorkshire to provide that door-to-door service, but also needs to be big enough to carry sufficient passengers to make the sort of model work. We also need, obviously, more of an accessible layout than a traditional conventional bus, with low floors, more space for wheelchairs and other mobility equipment. The existing fleet is well beyond its anticipated operating life, with all the vehicles are now between 11 and 18 years old. Obviously, because of this, we've sort of experienced more and more failures of the service, which is obviously starting to have an impact on the service that we can provide. So we need to renew the fleet in its entirety now, and just to say that we would expect vehicles of this nature to be replaced sort of every 8 to 10 years. As set out in the paper, the market is not sufficiently developed to allow the Combined Authority to replace the entire fleet with a fully electric vehicle. So what we're looking to do, subject to procurement, which is ongoing, is introduce an ultra-low emission diesel fleet with a small amount of electric vehicles subject to the procurement process. So the recommendations are that the Combined Authority approves the Access Bus Fleet Replacement Scheme to proceed through decision point 2.4 and work commence on activity 5, which is delivery, that the Combined Authority approves funding of £6.5 million and the total scheme value is £6.5 million. Future approvals are made in accordance with the assurance pathway set out in the paper, and note that 650,000, which is 10% of the total scheme cost, is for risk and contingency allowance. And I would just finish by saying that having travelled on Access Bus and met some of our customers, it really is a real vital lifeline to many people in West Yorkshire who rely on this service to get out and about, and importantly give them that social interaction, which, as we know, can sometimes be lacking. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you so much, Rachel. And those in favour of the recommendations, please raise your hand. Thank you. Anybody against? And anybody abstaining? Thank you. The next item is the West Bradford Cycle Superhighway Phase 2 programme. Simon?
Thank you, Matt. So this is a proposed segregated cycleway between Bradford City Centre and Thornton. The full scheme aims to increase cycling on the route by 10% and reduce the occurrence of cycle-related accidents, aligned to our Vision Zero objectives. Construction of Phase 1 up to the A6177 junction was completed last year. This approval relates to the full business case for Phase 2 and recommends total funding of £16.1 million to deliver the project. Obviously, complementing works delivered as part of Phase 1 is a strong strategic case for delivery, providing safe and attractive facilities that will encourage greater cycle access into Bradford City Centre.
Thank you so much. Okay, those in favour of the recommendations, please raise your hand. Thank you. Those against? Anyone abstaining? Thank you. Okay, the approval of the extension of the Thornton Road scheme delivery date to November 27 with a 6-month tolerance and allow future approval through the assurance pathway. Bless you. Please, Simon.
Thank you. So, yeah, this additional approval relates to the junction improvement scheme at Thornton Road. Full approval was granted by the Combined Authority in July 2024. It's an £8 million scheme. It's actually at the intersection between phases 1 and 2 of the West Bradford Cycle Superhighway. So Bradford Council is has delayed discharging conditions associated with the existing approval in order to enable sequencing of the construction works with the West Bradford Cycle Superhighway scheme. As a result, the delay has extended the original programme tolerances, requiring the extension of time that you've just set out. Therefore, we're recommending that the Combined Authority approves extending delivery from March 2026 to November 27. The total funding remains within the originally agreed envelope.
Thank you so much. Those in favour of the recommendations on Thornton Road, please raise your hand. Thank you. Those against? Anyone abstaining? No, thank you so much. Moving on to project approval 12D. And if I may just, before we do this, just request your patience. We are going to extend this meeting so we can have a full conversation about mass transit for another 15 minutes. I hope that's okay with everyone. We do need to stay quorate, so if I could make sure that we have our leaders tied to the chairs so they can't go anywhere. If we can move on, and I'll go as fast as I can, the creative industries seasons of culture, to build on that success of our years of culture. Felix, if you just want to give us a headline, that would be grand.
I will, thank you very much. This is seeking £1.3 million to ensure we can continue to invest in culture and build on the legacy, the legacy of the years of culture in the UK City of Culture in Bradford that we've had last year. It allows us to match funding from our arm's length bodies, from our local authority partners. And the first year will be themed around nature, and the plan is for next year to be around, I think, public art and sculpture. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Are we happy to, are we in favour of the recommendations? Please raise your hand. Thank you. Anyone against? Anyone abstaining? No, thank you so much. Okay, the portfolio summary is next, item 13. Kate, if you could take us through the report and recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I won't dwell on kind of time in there. Obviously, this report is the report as it usually is, so it takes the performance to date of the funds, adds in what you have just heard in terms of project approvals, and shows the kind of the position on the programmes that are in there. Happy to take any questions in there. Noting the questions that we had previously about the format of the report. We are looking at that. We're implementing a new project system at the moment, which gives us some enhancements surrounding reporting, and we'll be looking to launch that in, obviously, as well with the integrated settlement as well. Gives us a chance to have a look at that for the 26-27 municipal year.
Thank you. Any comments? Yes, Councillor Kildane.
Very briefly, Mayor, it would be remiss not to give my regular update when substituting for Councillor Douglas that York Station Gateway continues to transform the entrance into York. Every time I go through it, it's getting better, and that's pretty much on a daily basis. But today, when I entered the station, coming to this meeting, Mayor Skaith was there with Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander, signing his part of the Northern Powerhouse Rail Compact, and I just thought, what a difference devolution has made to the north of England, and what a difference, dare I say it, Labour-led combined authorities have made to Yorkshire. So thank you, Mayor. And on that note, I don't think you need me for chorusy, so I'll take my leave.
That's a very good way to end. Thank you, Councillor Kilbane, and my regards to your wonderful Mayor. Okie doke. Those in favour of the recommendations, please raise your hand. Those against? Anyone abstaining? No, thank you. Okay, moving on to the mass transit update. Everybody around this table was briefed on the announcement about the programme last month. This report provides the CA with a formal update. Mass transit remains the largest local transport project in the country, central to our vision for inclusive economic growth, better connectivity and creating opportunities for decades to come. Our partnership with central government remains strong and secure. In an exchange of letters with Transport Minister Lord Peter Hendy, I secured clear backing for the programme and a pledge to explore ways to accelerate delivery. Government is even considering adding mass transit to its major projects portfolio. This strengthened relationship means we're working hand in hand with government to deliver mass transit once and for all. An independent peer review has helped shape an updated timeline that reduces risk and ensures success, while services will now begin in the late 2030s. This approach prioritises certainty and ensures every stage is backed by a government spending mandate, giving us funding security and alignment with national priorities. My commitment to spades in the ground 2028 remains, and we've also secured further investment commitments last week following the Northern Powerhouse Rail announcement, where government confirmed funding beyond 2032 which is great news. And those of you watching TV closely on the rail announcement, you'll have heard the Chancellor say on live TV, mass transit means tram. That doesn't mean we're taking our eye off the ball in developing a strong business case to prove to government that tram is the right option. But as you know, the way I feel, the case has already been made across the country and in European cities that tram is a driver of growth. Members will also be aware we've shared the NISTA review as an exempt appendix, and you all know we wanted to share a public summary, but after taking legal advice, we've been able to share the full report amongst members of this committee. And also Nikki can share more details of that advice if necessary. And before we move on, if I could invite John Reid to come and join us at the table, who is our interim lead on mass transit and comes with fine pedigree for having sorted out Euston Station. And what's the other one? Transpennine. I'm very pleased that you are free and that you can help us in this moment. So over to you if you want to say a few words, or shall I just throw it open for discussion?
I could just say a few words.
Please, thank you, John.
If that's appreciated. Hi everyone. Look, just to say, really delighted to be here. It's an absolute privilege to work on this programme, have an opportunity to make a difference with it. I've met so many people recently, but looking around the table, not quite everyone. So I look forward to doing that. And as Tracy said, absolutely committed to trying to build a compelling case that paints a picture of a vision for West Yorkshire as a place, the outcomes we want to achieve that we talked about earlier, and what the step change difference a Wheeler network with a mass transit scheme will make compared to one without. Also very conscious people are interested in governance and how we work together. So, you know, I'm still to support Ben and Tracy, picking up a piece of work to look at how do we bring districts together, how do we get together, with the objective of creating that successful case Tracy talked about for the government to release the funding, really trying to build our governance around collaboration and problem solving as well as challenge. Really look forward to working with you. If I haven't met you already, I hope we've got something in the diary. I wish you'd about now, I think. But I look forward to working with you and hope we can make a difference on this and really move it forward this year.
Thank you so much, and your expertise is really welcome. I'm sorry to the public and to members of the press because we're going to be discussing the exempt item, is my understanding.
Members want to.
Would members like to discuss the exempt item? Councillor Lamb, it's not about the exempt item.
Well, there are some things I'd like to say in public, and then there are some things I'd like that I can't say in public.
Fantastic. Thank you, Councillor Lamb.
So, first of all, just to correct some of the things that you said in your introduction. One, you said all members had been briefed before, because that's technically accurate, but you'd briefed the press first before you briefed all members, and we were only briefed because we asked to be briefed, because the press then contacted us to ask if we had any comment. So it's not fair to say that I find that disrespectful to members of this board, and I hope that's not something that will happen again. The second point, obviously, we can't say a lot of, or we can't talk about what you've just said in the public session. I respect Nikki immensely and her judgment. I still think there's some conversations to be had about what can and should be shared of this independent peer review, but we'll have to discuss that in private, unfortunately. What I would say is the paper and the presentation you've just given bear no correlation to the independent peer review, and I would go as far as to say it was dishonest in terms of some of the things that you've just said. I won't go any further than that, and I'll touch on it in the private session. I think people need to see and understand what is in this paper and what the implications are, because mass transit is...
I'm so sorry, Councillor. I can't allow you to continue if you're challenging me about honesty. I'm absolutely outraged that you have challenged my honesty. Councillor Hinchcliffe.
I just think, as that has been said, I think it is beholden on the city solicitor to provide the advice again about why this exemption is in private, because that is not a decision of the mayor, that is a decision of the combined authority. So I think it's just really important that you repeat that.
Thank you, Nikki.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Hinchcliffe and Mayor. Councillor Lamb, just to reiterate, I provided some quite clear advice when we were seeking authority to exempt the report and the papers. Now, the whole nature of Schedule 12A, paragraph 3, relates to financial and commercial affairs of an authority or a business. The report that's been commissioned is a peer review. It's an independent peer review of which there are other government bodies involved. And when you undertake a peer review, it's really important that candid information can be expressed honestly in order for public projects to progress and changes to be made. That report sits squarely within paragraph 3 for those particular reasons, including matters around commerciality, financial risk and other matters that arise. The posture within paragraph 3 sits squarely within this, and it's my legal opinion as monitoring officer that the exemption should be applied in full for those reasons. I'm happy to discuss it further with you privately or in a private session, but that is my legal assessment at this moment in time. I would add that that duty is an ongoing duty. Schedule 12A in paragraph 3 and the duty under the Freedom of Information Act, although parallel, are separate assessments, but we as a local authority will always consider and review our position as to when disclosure is required at the right time. At this moment in time, it's premature. It would create a mosaic impact, and we wouldn't be able to disclose even a redacted version.
Thank you, Nikki. And as always, we take your legal advice. We are not lawyers. We take legal advice from people who can protect our organisation, but also make sure the public have as much of the facts as we are possible to give. If I may ask the councillor to retract your assumption about my honesty, I'll give you a moment to do that.
Mayor Brabin, I didn't contradict Nikki's advice. I accept Nikki's advice. My point was there is a fundamental disconnect between the tone and nature and content of the public paper and what's in the private papers, to the point of being dishonest. And
It was personal about my honesty. Please retract the statement about honesty.
I didn't say you were dishonest, Mayor. I don't believe you're dishonest. I believe what's presented in the paper, many members of the public would perceive as being dishonest, and I stand by that.
Nikki, do you want to talk about the truth of the situation we have found ourselves in?
I think Councillor Lamb is entitled to make statements of personal nature. However, for the purpose of clarity, the statement that you've made, would you like to make a public statement that that was not aimed at the Mayor or otherwise? And it's simply in relation to how the paper is drafted or presented? I think that clarity is quite important for the purpose of a public meeting.
Yeah, I'm happy to confirm that's the intent. If any other intent was assumed or implied, that wasn't my intention.
Thank you. And if I could encourage all members not to use this meeting ahead of local elections for electioneering. Thank you. But Ben Still.
Thank you, Chair. Just to make clear the point that the officers that drafted this paper, we don't believe that there's been any breach of honesty or integrity either. So Councillor, I'm absolutely entitled to your opinion, but I think it is that, and we believe we've acted in the fairest way with integrity. Thank you.
Good stuff. Thank you. So are we minded to discuss the exempt item? We would like to discuss that. Councillor Holsworth, you're nodding. So members of the press and public, apologies again, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you so much. This is not good, 2 o'clock. Lovely, thank you. Welcome back, everyone. That was a good discussion, thank you. So can we take the recommendation the Combined Authority notes the government's continued commitment to the programme, the independent peer review and the resulting timescale changes, shifting the forecast for operational mass transit from mid-30s to late 2030s, and that the Combined Authority notes the revised submission timetable of the Phase 1 Strategic Outline Case SOC to government. Those in favour of the recommendations, please raise your hand. Thank you. Those against? Those abstaining? Thank you so much for your continued commitment. Okay, we got there, 2 o'clock. Sorry for the late finish. Thank you for all of your commitment and your dedication to ensuring that we deliver for the people of West Yorkshire. I'm continually grateful for your smarts and your attendance, so thank you. Okay, next meeting, Thursday the 12th of March, and I close the meeting, and no baby as yet. So thank you all so much. Thank you, everyone. If you could end the meeting. Thank you.